like to welcome everybody out to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting this evening, and welcome you all. Commissioner Mitchell, Todd Mitchell, is not with us tonight, so I'll be chairing the meeting tonight, and we'll wish him a speedy recovery from his vacation. How's that? So tonight we'll begin with the pledge, and we'll ask Commissioner Clayson to lead us in the pledge.
Your Honor, please rise.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first item of business tonight is to approve the minutes from July. Are there any questions or discussion about the minutes before we ask for a vote?
Nope, I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the minutes from July. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes. Our first item tonight of business is a zone change, several zone change items. The first one is A, which is a zone change that is asked for by Pacific Horizon Credit Union. And Brandon, are you taking this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chairman, I do have a conflict of interest, so I recuse myself from this.
Okay.
That mean you're going to come stand by me? Perfect. Sorry. Thank you. Just to orient ourselves real fast, this is 1175 South Main Street, just to the north of the event center. Let's go to the next slide, please. This kind of shows the subject property. What they're looking for is to rezone the property for a future location of the business. Let's go to the next slide, please. So currently you can see we have some existing commercial around it, and then obviously the public facility for the rec center. Once again, we're looking specifically at this property. Thank you. Currently residential office. There is a home on the property. The applicant is in the process of getting that inspected and demolished. And so pretty straightforward request. The general plan land use designation is mixed use, and the applicant does anticipate developing soon, whether it's later this fall or early in the spring. We do have a recommendation for you if we go to the next slide. Oh, I always forget. We do have some imagery. Appreciate Ian going out and taking some of these pictures, all of these pictures that we'll see. If we keep going through, we've got each direction. What was interesting when I first looked at these is almost every picture speaks to the growth that we're experiencing in Spanish Fork. You can see multiple projects under construction in different stages. Next slide is our motion recommendation from the Development Review Committee. Let's go to the next slide, please. So once again, the proposal, we're looking specifically at just the zoning tonight, changing that from residential office to general commercial is the request. The Development Review Committee did look at the proposal and has passed this positive recommendation on to you with the finding as listed in the staff report. Any questions for staff?
Do we know what the use is going to be?
Yes, a Pacific Horizon Credit Union.
Okay, to remind me that I'm just going back in the history a little bit. So a few months ago, we had the very next neighboring to the south property.
Yes,
Is
LNS
where
Commercial.
that's where there's a development that will. They said there's a wall between it and foliage, trees all the way around.
Yes.
Then the owner at the time, I'm assuming that this has been sold.
Yes.
And the neighbor at the time objected till they knew, but now, anyway, what the
You're
aesthetics would be like.
correctly. And
Okay,
so the
and so
specific
that is,
item that we addressed with the site to the south was an appropriate transition buffer, because at the time the house was to remain Since that time, the owner has decided to sell. That transaction's been completed.
And will any of the wall or the trees, landscaping change at all with the neighboring?
The applicant to the south is looking at their expanded options now, I guess we could say, because the way the code reads is if you're adjacent to a residential use or a residential zone, then we require the transition by municipal code. Where the house will be torn down, the residential use will no longer exist. But the current proposal to change it to commercial, then that residential zone wouldn't be on the books either. And so to the south, they do have some options that they can look at. We haven't seen anything submitted, but we have been in touch with them. They had some questions about this proposal and what it might do as far as options for their development.
I don't know if my opinion matters in this. I wouldn't mind if there wasn't a wall there if it's an adjoining commercial, but I really loved the landscaping and the architecture on the north side that they had planned on that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Maybe, Brandon, you could just orient us all
Yeah.
on the map of what is shown there, the business to the south there, and what else we have.
This is the River Bridge Event Center to the south, South Lane coming off of Main Street, Rec Center, which is under construction. And then just a reminder, these items will be public hearings as well. And we do invite the applicant up if there's no questions for staff.
Is the highlighted portion one lot, one separate legal lot?
Yes, it's 1 acre in size.
Okay.
I have two other questions. Number one is, have we seen we don't have a preliminary plat as part of this? This is just a,
No conceptual site plan yet.
site
but that
plan,
will
I'm
be-
sorry.
That will be coming soon.
okay.
I know
I guess
that
I was just
the-
wondering if there was gonna be ingress and egress on both sides of the property or just Main Street
Possibly.
side?
I'll let the applicant speak to that, but the DRC did give him the heads up that in the future there may be limited or no access off of South Lane. And I believe the site would be designed in a way that the Main Street access would be a viable option.
Oh, I forgot about that. And then the other is, I assume that you've spoken with that Pacific Horizon's spoken with the neighbors to the north?
I can't speak to that, but we do send out public notices of the hearing, and we actually did have the property owners to the north come in and visit with staff and kind of get an idea of what was proposed and what the future for the area might look like, because back to the zoning map, you've got large portions of potentially developable commercial, and if I recall correctly, I believe the same family owns all three or both remaining lots there. There's 2 homes and then some collectible cars and whatnot, hobby cars that he stores in some of the garages. But
Thank you.
thank you.
Before we go into public hearing, we'll invite the applicant to come up and to say anything that you'd like to about the proposal. And if there are any questions that we have for you, we'll ask them. State your name.
My name is Claycy Crandall. I'm representing Pacific Horizon.
Thank you.
So if there's any questions for us regarding that, I can try and help or I can find an answer for it. Any question? No?
I have one question.
Yeah.
And that is that this is a real improvement for the credit union, and I think it'll be an excellent site. Will the credit union be disposing of the property on 3rd South?
I think we're putting it up for sale. So, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
And about when would you start construction? Well, first you'll have to have all the drawings and submit the site plan and everything, but how soon would you like, or when would you like to be operational there?
As soon as possible would be great when we can start building.
A week from Friday?
Yep.
Okay.
You say when, we'll go.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Yeah.
We will go into public hearing at this time and invite anyone who would like to talk about this proposal to come up and state your name. If you've got a longer comment, and if there are a lot of people who want to comment tonight, we will have a time limit that we will put on it. If there's only one or two, that it's not as important. And if there are more than one or two, you might want to have just one that would represent your views on that so that we don't get bogged down in a lot of discussion. So I would invite anyone that would like to come up and talk about this proposal to come up now. Seeing none, we will go, oh, absolutely.
Hi, my name's Holly Oakleberry, and I am actually one of the residents of those north lots. I just have two questions, mainly, I guess, to the city and the developers. How is this going to impact the residential as far as zoning in the immediate future? Does the city have a timeline that you want to commercialize that entire strip by?
We will answer that after we've gone out of public hearing. And so, is that the only question you've got, is how the zoning will affect the residences on the north?
On the north, and if there is a timeline to commercialize that entire strip?
Thank you. We'll address that. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll go out of public hearing. And I believe if we just go back to the zoning map that we had, it is currently zoned.
So the
It's
residential units can remain. That was the message we delivered to the property owners, was as long as they want to maintain them residentially, they can. To my knowledge, the city has no desire to rezone the property. The city code gives a number of options where zone changes can occur. One is when they're requested by the property owner. Two is when it's initiated by the city council. In this case, I don't see that happening. I don't believe that's an action that the council has taken in the recent past. They've been very supportive and protective of people's property rights, and if they want to maintain it residentially, they can do so. We're also sensitive to how the property is used, and so, for instance, what Commissioner Warnick was referring to recently about the property to the south and the discussion that went through as far as the transition buffer, that would then apply to the north edge of this property and will need to be incorporated into their design. We also look at things as appropriate lighting, landscaping, and things of that nature to try and soften the impact that it might have being that close to a residence.
Great.
Yeah, and Mr. Snyder and Chairman, I might just add to emphasize a couple of things that Brandon just mentioned. And I think this image helps describe what I think likely would happen pretty well, where it's been a few years since we received the application to change the zoning for what is now the River Bridge Event Center property. And then last year, a few years after that application, we received the application to change the zoning on the property to the north of that. Here we are tonight at the request, for the third time in this area, that's coming from a property owner to change the zoning. And that's really been kind of the way things have worked, with the city reacting to proposals that come from property owners. And again, like Brandon said, I think we'd expect that going forward as well. The city hasn't necessarily been proactive to zone properties ahead of property owners' wishes.
Excellent point. I have one question, and that is that the property on the north does have some agricultural land, and I believe that's watered with irrigation water. Is that right? Has that been addressed? Will that be affected at all with the proposed change tonight?
I don't think on this action item. Definitely when the site plan is drawn up, part of our requirements for the site plan proposal is to show any existing infrastructure, utilities, things of that sort. So if there is an existing irrigation line, those would need to be called out on the plans, and then the applicant would make, I just drew a blank, they would interact with the irrigation company to see if that is piped, if that's still needed, if that can be rerouted. But some of those options are at the discretion of the irrigation company.
Thank you. I'll ask the applicant really quickly, do you use the same ditch or pipeline that is being used by this property that's being changed tonight?
Will you
Could you
please
step
speak
up
in the
to the
mic?
microphone so everyone can hear? Thank you. I should have asked that in the first place.
Yes, I think we are about the end of the line for that ditch that runs on the east side of South Lane, so we do still use it.
Does your water come underneath the road to your property, or does it come from somewhere down here and to you on the west side,
No, we have to dam it.
on the east side?
On the east side.
Perfect, thank you. So that should not affect you, this proposal tonight, if it's coming across anyway. Okay, thank you. Any other discussion or questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I move that the proposed zone change be recommended to the City Council for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes. Thank you. The next item that we have is B, the Butterfield zone change. Brandon, are you still up? Are you
Can be.
going to be the first? Are you going to be the first through the cleanup hitter tonight?
Title 13, I believe, will actually be none other than Byron, so we'll
Okay.
let him have the pleasure of that item. We'll take a moment to let Commissioner Clayson rejoin others on the dais.
Welcome back.
So, second zone change item for the night. This one's a little different. This one and the next few will incorporate the use of overlay zones. This subject property is at 587 East, 500 North, currently vacant. Let's go to the next slide. As we orient ourselves, you can see the existing property highlighted there on the corner. Once again, the request, we currently have a base zoning of residential R16. The applicant is looking to utilize the infill overlay zone to construct a triplex on the property. So with that infill, the R3 is being requested. Let's go to the next slide, please. This is looking at the subject property. It will, redeveloping the site for a number of reasons will be a great improvement. You can see some of the public improvements are lacking, and so some of those improvements the applicant will be installing with the redevelopment of the property. You can see to the north there's an existing multi-unit building with the existing vinyl fencing. Part of the request is the applicant's looking to retain that, where they do have less than 4 units in their project proposed. The City Council will have discretion to waive what otherwise would have been a masonry wall if it was a larger scale development. We would see with the request vinyl fencing installed down the east side. Let's go to the next slide. This is looking to the south. The proposed access to the site will be retained in the same location that you can see there. Next slide, please. Once again, this is looking somewhat north. Next slide. So next slide actually will be work. So jumping into the details, once again, we've got north on the top of the screen, existing fence. This would be the parking area. Once again, it's a triplex is the proposal. Each one would have a single single garage, single car garage, and then we have adequate parking to the west of it. If we look with the infill, the applicant does have the opportunity to improve the quality, and with that, there can be modified standards. And so an example of one of the standards that they're looking at, modification-wise, and this was discussed at length with the DRC, who did pass on the positive recommendation to you. But for instance, slight reductions in setbacks that kind of pull the building to the corner, fronted on the corner. That would open up a little more usable green space there to the north. That was one of the requests. We've already talked about the wall. So let's go to the next slide. This shows the landscaping improvements, and so we do have the street trees that would go on the park strips. You can kind of see some of the planting details in addition to the trees. The code does require for the landscape buffer anytime you have multifamily housing, and so you can see the trees that would line the north and the west property lines. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. These are the building elevations of what would be built. So this right here is facing east. The front perspective would be east, and so that would put the rear at the west. To the street side, right here to the south. And let's go ahead and jump to the next slide. Once again, public hearing on this item. We do have the positive recommendation from the Development Review Committee to change the zoning, and they based it on the findings and conditions as outlined in the staff report. Any questions for staff on this item?
Guess not.
Thank you.
Thanks. Do we have someone representing the applicant tonight? Would you come forward and state your name and tell us a little bit about the project?
Yeah, my name is Taylor Butterfield. My wife and I live just a block down the street from where this project is at, and so we were just, looking to, I guess, develop that property and make it a little prettier in that neighborhood, and we think it'd be a good project, so we're looking forward to getting started, if that's approved.
And do you live right there close?
Not anymore. We have moved, but we still, live just that block away is where we have another property.
Okay, I have a question as I looked at, maybe you could go back to the site plan. It looks like there's some pop-outs that come to the east. Those, are they porches?
Yeah, that's the front door.
Okay, and we're
all
okay
three
on
of the-
setbacks there then?
When you say okay, sorry, let me rephrase that. As part of their proposal, they are requesting the setbacks as shown. And so if we go back to the elevations, you'll have the porches and then you'll also have the awnings that would be over. That's what those pop-outs are representing. And so the main living area is the plane behind it.
Right. And we have okayed these kinds of porches and coverings before, right?
Yes, we have granted modified setbacks for other infill projects.
good.
And so
Okay.
What are the
your
setback-
role here, to be specific,
I think it's there.
so we've got 10 feet on the corner, 10 feet on the front, and then the rear I don't have written down, but it's at least 30 feet because we've got 18 in parking with, more than 30 feet. We've got 26 feet in backing, and so quite a bit of length on the rear, and then to the north,
Is the-
there's at least 30.
Is the east side there the front doors?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
My recommendation would be do something to spruce up the south side elevation.
Can we
Since it's
go-
a frontage, it's a street frontage, and it's just looking one-dimensional.
Can we go to the elevations, Byron? So the street side, this one here,
Yeah, that's a frontage along the main road there.
Yes.
The east one looks good. That's the front doors. It's also a frontage on the main road.
Do you have any recommendations on that? We did try to do that pop out just to kind of give it somewhere where we can separate, do some different siding or exterior. Right now we have it as like a stain versus the paint, but
The way that you've mixed up the colors, meaning you have this dark color and then you have white and another color, even that's more interesting than that south side elevation to me.
Or even like
Okay.
a second, you have one, one pop out, even two pop outs on that.
Yeah. I
Okay.
could see that being kind of ugly to drive by.
okay.
I'm also wanting to know what the material is.
It would be board and batten siding, like a concrete based siding.
That's nice.
I'm not in love
And
with
then
that,
painted.
but it might be the new thing.
So,
It looks a little bit
the
industrial to me. Am I, maybe I'm not looking at that quite right?
It would be like most residential houses, like with the board and batten and then painted. So it will look, I don't know, more modern, I guess,
Yeah.
like what a lot of the houses have.
Right.
So I think most of the houses around that area will have like the vinyl siding or aluminum siding, which looks a little bit cheaper. And then like they'll have some brick, but kind of like a 3-foot brick coating on the front and then the cheaper siding.
Mike, I've got a couple of questions. One is, how many bedrooms do you have in each of these?
3 bed, 2.5 bath.
Square footage?
I don't remember.
Okay.
1,500.
3 bed.
Well, how many square feet? 1,300 square feet.
Okay, and then in the back at the parking, you have 3 single car garages, and then how many parking stalls do you have?
Yeah, 8 or 9 stalls on there. So we had a little bit extra than the 1.5 rule on there.
Or the 2.5 rule?
But yeah, 2.5.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's really good, because when you have a 3rd bedroom, you can have a family with teenager. You can have up to 3 cars, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of on-street parking there, which is great. But in the winter, we have a city ordinance about not being able to park in the road
Yeah,
during the winter storm. So that extra parking will come in handy for that.
Yeah, definitely.
I have one question. What we're showing there now is vinyl, or on your plan is vinyl fence,
Yep.
and we're okay with that because it's residential, is that right?
We're potentially okay with it if the city council acts on it in that manner. And so the code specifically calls out for projects of 4 or less that the masonry wall requirement can be waived by the city council. And
Okay.
so the applicant's desires have been shown on the plans, which are to keep their neighbor's existing fence and then duplicate it on the west side as well.
Okay.
And so
All right.
we would take that to the council and they would act specifically on the project as it's proposed.
But we are proposing that that's okay. Staff has proposed and DRC has proposed that it looks good.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions for the applicant?
You asked for specifics on the south side.
Yep.
Potentially a second one of those pop-outs you have now that
Okay.
has the 2 windows. But I don't think I'd want to be specific. I'd probably just leave it up to staff
Okay.
for what you think it should be,
Gotcha.
so you have more options.
Okay. Thanks.
Being on the corner there and
Yeah, because
having,
we could also incorporate like landscaping as well. Like some buildings will have like eaves where it will pop out and it kind of has a border with metal where like the eaves can kind of grow up the side if you want to do something like that.
And I was just gonna say it's hard because it's really 2 main roads, and so it's hard
Exactly.
to figure out like how to make it look like not the front. You know what I mean? So that's why we
The
made
front
the
looks
other
good.
side look like the front, even though
Yeah.
I don't know. It was hard.
It's just a lot of the same type of space is all. So I don't want to be specific. I want you guys to think about it.
Okay.
I'll be specific. Let's jump back to the
Okay.
landscaping. I like
You
the
do have
fact
3
that we
large
already
trees.
have 2 trees proposed, and then if we jump back to the elevations, this is just my humble opinion, but I actually like the subtleness of the colors as now instead of doing like a white. I think that would just be too stark, but that's my opinion. If it's-
It could even be more windows. I'm just kind of worried about this whole space right here, and then that. But that's my only thought.
Okay. Thanks.
we have been a little bit sensitive to that, where we have had situations like this where you are on a corner like that, There are quite a few examples from years past where it's just a stark wall, nothing. You know, it looks like an outdoor movie screen. And, you know, we'd like to see everything be a little bit more friendly, you know.
Okay.
And, you know, so that when you build this, we'd like to see it be something that is an asset to the community and something that the neighbors can look at. And if it ever comes up in your neighborhood again, it'd be nice for us to be able to say, go take a look at this one.
Yeah.
You know, this one was a really good, you know, they did everything right. And so, you know, the suggestions we have a lot of times are along that vein, that we're just trying to make it look as good as possible.
Another
And-
reason we're trying to make it look as good as possible is one thing I think through is I would like, if there is a recession, hopefully there isn't, I would like Spanish Fork's occupancy rates to be the highest in the county.
You bet.
Because our products look the best and it's a place people want to live, and they would choose your triplex over some other triplex somewhere else and pay you instead of someone else in Springville or Provo because yours looks better. So I think through that too.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we can have our architect kind of draw up some things as well if they have some better ideas.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we will go into public hearing on this again. If we have a large number of people, we may want to limit the time that you have for your discussion or your comments. Otherwise, we'll invite anyone who would like to at this time. Well, so now we'll go into public hearing. Anyone who would like to come up and be heard on this matter is welcome to come up, state your name, and give us any comment that you may have. Sure.
Glad you're here.
My name's Tim Slocum. I'm a resident on 500 North, 572 East. And when we found out the lady who previously owned the property was releasing it and the family was going to sell it, we did not realize it was going to be turned into another duplex, triplex, fourplex, sixplex, as that whole area is starting to turn into. It's like we're losing residential dwellings for single-family occupancy. And it was really a shock when we got the notice that there was going to be a hearing to put a triplex on that. And of course, my envision of the triplex is that it was a single, like the duplex that just went on around the corner here about 2 years ago, that it was going to be single story, not that it was going to be multi-story. That doesn't necessarily fit in with the surrounding area. But again, the fourplex to the north of us is a multi-story fourplex. And it just seems like we're squeezing all our single dwelling stuff out. I was also surprised because it kind of gives the intent that this has already been kind of pre-approved. I mean, Central Bank has a sign up on the corner. It says this is being funded by. And it almost gives you the impression that, whoop, everything's been signed, the city's done it, you know, the planning commission's done it, and the developer. And it's a shame that it happened that way. This property should be left for single-family dwellings. High-density housing or multi-dwellings are just starting to just suck the life out of regular neighborhoods, meaning the traditional single-family dwellings. Most of the multi-dwelling housing complexes fall in despair. Overcrowded street parking, including RV, trailers, boats, and ATVs, and exterior landscapings are not kept up. It seems like, well, once it's done and they get the people in there, that's it. There's nothing that's holding them, binding them to keep it some type of upkeep on those dwellings. I mean, you can go around some of the fourplexes and duplexes around our neighborhood, and some, you know, the roofs are in despair, the siding's in despair, the landscaping's full of weeds. It just seems like the developers come in, they do what they want to do, they're getting their money, so that's it. They're not. It just seems like they're not held accountable. Our block should be kept, like I said, single family dwellings. It should be replaced with the same type that was torn down. and we shouldn't have a variance to put something else in there. No matter what the developer says, it's all about making money off his investment with no responsibility or accountability to the neighborhood or local community. Once it's built, they don't care, do not change the zoning or agree to. Now, on the flip side of this, I was shocked when I found out it was, when I just saw the pictures tonight, right almost across the street from me now, I have this 2-story building that just is bare. It doesn't have any personality, and the colors definitely do not fit in the neighborhood. If approved, I wish it would be a duplex instead of a triplex. Number 2, that the entry, even though they tried to make an accommodation for the parking, that they can easily just as well come in from 600 North along the side of the building and come into their parking lot just as well as they can from 500 North. I mean, 600 East versus 500 North. So I would like them to switch that if they were going to do it and in fact, actually they could share the fourplex that's already there, has their driveway coming in from 600 East. And why can't they just put theirs in the same way and kind of share that and not add any more traffic to, 6 more cars or whatever it may be, because you have one parked in the garage and one in the parking lot. And the other thing is, I don't know if the planning commission or the developer has any intent to maybe putting whoever goes in there and lives, that they have some type of CCRs or something. That all of a sudden we start getting junk start piling up and all sorts of motorcycles in the front yard. And I mean, as you drive around, I hate to say this, but as I drive around Spanish Fork, one of my pet peeves is all the stuff that's being parked in the front yards of the residents these days. And in fact, I was just coming down 400 East, and here's 2 fifth wheels parked in the street. It's just like all of a sudden we cram all this stuff into small spots, and everybody then has nowhere to put all their junk. And then it's you're talking about you want everybody to live in Spanish Fork. How can everybody live in Spanish Fork when some of the facade that we put out there is junk? And like I said, I would hope that you don't change it, but I think that's sort of a dead deal because somebody wants somebody to move here in Spanish Fork versus go to Provo. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, we've got enough, but it just seems like everything we're building, just like the duplex that was built a couple of years ago on 600 East around the corner, it's crammed into a tiny little lot. And we're just taking these lots that were originally developed for single-family dwellings, and now we're trying to cram 3 times as much space or occupancy in them as we had for single-family dwellings. And the other thing I worry about is we're in an old part of town. And even though Spanish Fork does a really good job, I love the street department, let me tell you, of trying to keep up with the sewer, the water, and so on. But here we are, as we're trying to now convert from single family, which the roads were originally developed for, in the sewer systems, and now we're adding 3 times as more residents. And it seems like every time we plop one of these type units in here, it's going to take the old section of town, and it's going to just put more pressure on the city to go in there and revamp it. I know the developer has some obligation to do some stuff, but that doesn't take care of the rest of the stuff that the city's required for. So anyway, that's my spiel. And like I said, and I hope the trees grow fast because I have trees. I'm on. If you bring up the slide, I'm the house that's also. Hang on, back up. Right there with all the trees around it across the street. That's me. So.
Well, thank you.
Anyway, I appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments. Any others that would like to speak? Seeing none, we'll go out of public hearing, and we will go. There were a few different things brought up here. I think the main thing that there were a couple of things that that we can address. The first one being when we go from a single family unit to multiple family unit. We have rules and regulations that govern this to take care of that as much as possible. And the old part of town used to have lots that went halfway through the block, and people had cattle and sheep and everything else out there, horses. That's changed over the years. And as we've grown as a community, there will be changes. And I said this in a meeting a couple of months ago that building has become extremely expensive. And then rent and house payments has become expensive. I love my children and my grandchildren, and I'd like them to live close to me. They can't afford the cost of a single-family dwelling that may be as high as $700,000 to $800,000. So for the time being, they've got to find someplace else. And there's a lot of pressure on the cities and other places that we find housing for people that they can afford. And multi-unit dwellings are one of those ways that can accommodate that. The other thing is, too, is that you are a property owner and you have the right to do with it as you would please. And when you're a property owner, you have that right as long as it doesn't impinge on another person's right. And that's why we have these meetings, is to try and find that balance and to make those decisions. I'm not saying one way or another. It's just that we live in a changing world. And to say that we've driven a peg in the ground and we will not move from that, someone's going to run you over. Another thing that you brought up is, and it's a valid thing, is that, and maybe we can ask the applicant on this, who is going to perform the maintenance on this property, and will there be, it's not really a CC&R at that point, but because these units are going to be for rent, is that right?
Is it a property management
Would you come up to
company?
the microphone for just a second?
So that was a good point Tim brought up. It's Tim, yeah? Tim?
Yeah.
Right.
I do think there's a difference between a like small time investor, and that's who we are. So we would take care of it, and if we couldn't take care of it anymore, we would hire someone to take care of it. But we only have a few properties, and we just take care of them ourselves.
So the residents aren't going to be responsible
Right.
for mowing the lawn or taking care of the
No, we've tried that before. They won't do it. So.
well,
You've learned
Good
Tim's
point.
point for yourself. Okay.
and so you would be doing that. And of course, the next question is that if you ever decide to divest yourselves of the property, who will do it?
Yeah, we would just hire a company. I don't know who.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
somebody-
always an option, is to hire a company
Yeah.
to do it. But I think that was a very
That's a good point.
that was a very good question, and I think that it needs to be answered. So.
And CC&Rs are just as good as the people enforcing them. So if there's, I like the property management better in this case, especially since it's for rent.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other issues that need to be addressed by staff or by other commissioners?
Yes, actually. Could you tell us, Byron, are you the one that could tell us about the impact to utilities and sewer system?
Yeah, we've been working with them on their site plan. Each unit will have its own utility service for sewer and water. We actually have a city project that's gearing up to start here soon to replace the older water lines in 500 North and 600 East. And so we're going to coordinate with that city project to run new services to this property. So.
Is there plenty of capacity?
Oh, yeah, plenty of capacity. Yep.
I really appreciate all your concerns that you brought up, and one thing that I want to make make sure that you know is that this is the first time the Planning Commission has seen this project. It's definitely not a done deal. With that said, a lot of work has been done by the developer and our city planning department, engineers, development review committee, and so and so they've done a lot of work. We do rely on their expertise, but it's definitely not a done deal. We are, if you.
This probably sounds funny, or crazy, and I know they did a lot of work, the developer, in designing their buildings, but it looks more like a building that belongs in Park City than it does a building that belongs in Old Town Spanish Fork.
I can see what you mean. So, and then I have a couple other questions, and that is that one concern actually that has been something that we've talked about in the past too, Dave, is city parking enforcement. I guess parking enforcement is only as good as people that report to that call the city and say their yard is, they've got things parked in their yard. They've had things parked for months on end when they're really only supposed to be parking for 72 hours in front of their house. And so our city generally works on the enforcement if neighbors call. Is that correct?
Almost entirely, the approach is reactive to complaints, yeah, and not proactive. Having officers go out and look for things and keep track of time frames and that sort of thing without having somebody file some kind of a complaint, which basically is just a phone call, but letting us know that there's a potential problem.
And I've had a big problem with that in the past, but having gone through other conversations with city officials on this, is if we have people going out and specifically looking for violations, then then our property taxes go up because we need to hire more people to do that. So it's a tricky balance for me personally on that issue, because it's, I don't know, it's sticky. And then my other question is, I've got other notes on here. You addressed about upkeep, losing the single-family single-family housing. How would this look if it? Oh, I know. I have one other question. Two other questions. One is, would the owners be able to fit within the R3 zone if it was a duplex over? If it is the most, do we have to do an overlay where we're giving exception to ordinance because it's a triplex? Or could they fit within the R3 zone with the standards if it was a duplex?
It's currently R16.
Right,
That's
but
currently R16, and so to do anything other than the single family, that introduces the R3
Right.
and the infill.
But I mean, besides density, what are the infill overlay has to do with setbacks and?
The infill more has to do with small redevelopment opportunities.
Right.
And so there's a lot of fluidity in each project on an individual basis. And so to kind of touch generally, as I was listening to the public comments, it's interesting. There is a huge risk, obviously, on behalf of the applicant. This is at the discretion of the city council as far as, is this the intent of the infill overlay zone? But then there's also the balance of, if you look at the general plan, the policies that we strive for, we do want a variety of housing, we do want a variety of housing prices, but then we also desire stable neighborhoods. And so I don't know if I mentioned this when I started presenting it. This is an area that the general plan that we currently have adopted has identified as high-density residential. And so the proposal, as it's requested, is in line with that policy. And so what it ultimately will come down to is this is this what the city council envisions as far as an appropriate use of the infill overlay zone?
Gotcha, thank you. I think the other point that was brought up was the design is different. And one thing we have talked about with the infill overlay is, does the design fit with the neighborhood feel? And it seems like it's quite different from that. I think it's really cool, and I love the look of the, like what you were saying, the Park City kind of look. I don't know if anybody else has any concerns or thoughts about that.
I'll share a couple of thoughts that we had as we looked at the project, several months ago initially, and as things have kind of progressed. And without a doubt, there's some subjectivity, right, to how that question would be answered by people. But and I want to maybe before that touch on something that Brandon mentioned. The north side of Fifth North has a different general plan designation than the south side, with the idea that the density on the north side should be higher. And to some extent, I think that accounts for existing development that already exists on more blocks on the north side of Fifth North than blocks that are on the south side of Fifth North, including this block where just north of the subject property, we already have a number of different fourplexes and different things like that. So by way of kind of the scale of what the applicants have proposed here, I completely agree that it's clearly distinct from what you'd see fronting onto Fifth North, at least predominantly along that corridor, but it's not entirely distinct from what you'd see on other parts of the block. I'm not saying that's necessarily the best or only way to look at it, but that's partly how we looked at it as staff, in terms of just, okay, you've got a certain amount of bulk and mass with the building. Does that fit? And as we've talked about with some other applicants in recent months that have wanted to do infill development projects, I think one of the tricks of getting it right is making new construction look like it belongs, is the best way I can describe it. Make it look like it fits. And while I happen to very much like the architectural style of what the applicants have proposed here, and have supported it, as it's gone through our review process at staff level, I think pretty clearly, having just kind of taken another stroll via Google Earth along Fifth North, you could say that it doesn't necessarily match real well with what's along the corridor, and that might be something that the commission wants to consider further. And Sean, I don't know if that helps at all to your question and what you're asking about, but there's specific language that I can't quote right now. I could read it, in the infill overlay zone that I think provides direction as to things needing to mesh well with what's been in the neighborhood for decades, for example. So.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion?
If you'll go back to the last picture, does anybody have? I know that we are being picky about the frontage on the main road, but then the other side, next to the fence, next to the neighbors, does anybody have any thoughts or concerns that it's doesn't have a lot of interesting elevations on that side?
On the fourplex side?
On the right side perspective,
Where the fence is on
top
the
right,
right.
where the fence is.
I think on the landscape plan, it
Windows is
shows
not
trees that'll be growing there
Oh,
as part of the,
Trees, and then they have, at least they have windows. I'm not as bad.
gotcha.
Tim mentioned something that he kind of took it out of context, which is fine. Your comments were awesome, by the way. A lot of good points. I don't necessarily want everyone to live in Spanish Fork, but if it's built, I want it to be desirable so it has a high occupancy rate, because higher occupancy rates are just better all around for maintenance, crime, all that. It's better than having empty dwelling units, just so we're clear as far as what I'm after. General comments, for me, I'm okay with the 3 units. I think it fits on the space. I think they have adequate parking. It's self-contained. I think an architect, even their own architect, could drive in the area and come up with something that fits better for the area even the neighbors would like better. But I'm okay. I am okay with a 3-unit product here. I would like it to look more comparable to the area, look different, but I'm okay with the product. I don't. Tim made a comment about having the entrance off of 6th East instead of 5th North. I'm not sure what the benefit is there. I've thought through. I don't know. I would be open to hearing that, but I don't know what the benefit is necessarily. So I'm okay. I'm even okay with where the access is and what the current layout.
I like the access where it is with more green space on the north side of the building.
Yeah.
If you were to move the entrance to the north side, of course, you could move the entire building and have more green space on the 5th North side, but it wouldn't be as private, you know.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be as conducive to having a family picnic. How's that?
Good.
I think I'll make the comment about, I'm not crazy about the look and the product that is there, but I think that we have to be somewhat aware that the beauty of something is in the eye of the beholder. And if you look at new construction now, there's all kinds of different ones, you know, from nearly flat roofs to very high-pitched roofs. And I think that that's a very good point, that it does not match anything else on that street. I drove past it, and it doesn't meet the same architectural style that is there now. But then again, the fourplexes and the duplexes that are there don't necessarily meet it either. And so I have a hard time making that decision for somebody else what looks good. If it were mine, I would probably not have that architecture. But I have a hard time saying you must change it just because I don't like it. And I don't know how else to explain that.
I think I'm the odd guy out. I do like how it's position setting, and I like how it looks, but my wife didn't even let me pick anything out on our house, so that shows you.
Well, with good reason.
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I move that the proposed zone change to be recommended to the City Council for approval based on the staff's findings and conditions.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes.
You want to say any opposed?
Any opposed? I think we all said aye.
Okay.
But that's a
double
good
check.
point.
I was just confirming. I wasn't sure if I heard anything.
We'll move to item number C in our zone changes today, the Crumble zone change.
Thank you. I think next time we create the agenda, we'll put the villas first. I think everybody's here for that because I don't see free crumble cookie samples anywhere, but
Man.
Maybe they could have come and distributed a few cookies.
that was, sorry, my attempt at humor.
We got it.
We're looking at kind of a unique location. This is just to the east of what formerly was Albertson, sorry. Had a brain freeze for a second. Currently the Vasa Fitness there along Highway 6. We're looking at the property at 658 North, 900 East. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So the request for this, property is already zoned commercial. The applicant would like to modify the existing plans for the future phases of the property. This is a condominium plat, and so previous to this proposal, there were thought and attention given to where future buildings might be placed. This building is slightly larger than what was anticipated at that time. And so the applicant is looking to utilize what is titled the Development Enhancement Overlay in addition to the commercial zoning of the property. And it's specifically to deal with setbacks that are created by what you can see here is a partially vacated street. And so a number of years ago, this portion here was vacated. The remainder is still owned by the city and is still utilized as a street. As you can see, the street no longer connects to Highway 6. Let's go to the next slide, please. And so there is a provision in the code that allows for an applicant to request some modifications. In this case, it generally looks at parking, landscaping, setbacks, things of that nature. Sorry, I put these in the wrong order. So we'll go, this is the site in general. You see the existing building here, part of the same development, the Madison Business Park. This is the property that the applicant's looking to develop. Let's go to the next slide. This is just kind of showing a good view of how it relates to Highway 6. So here's the proposal. The applicant's looking at a 2-unit commercial building. Let's go to the next slide. Crumble would be anticipated to occupy this site, which would utilize the drive-through that would wrap around the building. Let's go to the next slide, please. This is the existing, sorry, this is a proposed amendment. We do have a more recent layout that we recently received, but it dealt with some changes over here. What we're focused on is this north portion here. That's the portion that's been requested for the development enhancement overlay. Sorry, go back. So you can see here the setback in question as to why it's before you tonight instead of just moving forward as a site plan is the proposed setbacks there. The Development and Review Committee, where it's been vacated and it's private ownership, felt comfortable with basing the setbacks off of where the property line now lies, even though it is partial street. You can kind of see the proposal access to the drive-through would come around the back of the building, and then they would exit onto the city street. Let's go to the next slide, please. This is the main portion of the property that would be impacted with this proposal. Excuse me. Next slide, please. This is showing the landscaping plan as proposed by this landscape architect. You would have parking that would be to the south of the building, and then once again, the drive-through would incorporate and then dump out onto the end of the city street.
So Brandon, half of the existing road, but it's been vacated, would go away, and the portion that remains would be the egress out of the store.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And I guess to sum up, or if you have any questions, we're looking specifically at utilizing that overlay to allow the commercial building to be developed as proposed to be placed, and then we do have the recommendation from the DRC for approval with findings and conditions as written.
What specifically are they able to do with the overlay that they can't do now?
In my opinion, it's the setbacks.
Setbacks?
Yes. Other questions for staff?
You said that the city still makes use of that road occasionally. What does it access for the city? What's the city's interest in that road?
I believe we have some utilities that lie in the road.
Are they dead-ended there, or do they come around Highway 6 and loop
Just
back in?
the storm drain connects to Highway 6, but the water line and everything's dead-ended right there. Most of it is just the access into the Vasa, but north of Vasa's access really isn't used too much. So.
Is the storm drain located in that portion of the road and now
No.
underneath the
building?
I guess it would just follow Highway 6, I guess.
Yeah, it follows Highway 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would not want any utilities under the building.
But as long as there is that utility in the road, you'd like to have control of it.
Yeah, mostly the water line stuff.
Okay. Any questions from the commission before we go into public hearing?
I have optimism. Maybe more businesses there will have Vasa clean up their parking lot. The
I agree.
potholes. It's
That's-
possible. Maybe.
And that area has just been unattended and overgrown with weeds since it's been there, so, yeah. Okay. Seeing no other discussion, we will go into public hearing. Is there anyone here to address this issue? Oh, let's have the applicant come up. Excuse me. We will do that before public hearing.
Yes, so Casey Cloward, and I'm just, I'll be the owner of the building and the, moving our location of Crumble into this drive-through opportunity. The main reason why we wanted to move the building from the existing plot was to enhance the opportunity for we need to add some parking requirements within the thing, and so that we adjusted it according to what we felt it was beneficial, especially with that corner coming to that sharp end and manipulating the drive-through. This was our best way to make it efficient for the use.
So that's
Then
the
we'll clean up
reason.
the garbage, make Parcell move his trailers around.
Yeah, where is he going to advertise now? I saw that in the Google Earth image. Kenny
Yeah.
Purcell. Where
Yeah.
now what?
They got
He's gonna go out of
5
business.
trailers, and they've been sitting there ever since. But
That's right.
I gave them permission.
That's nice of you.
Okay.
And so you'd be moving from your Main Street location?
Yes, we are in a month-to-month situation right now. Actually, Crumble that location is too small for our operations, and so the double entry is challenged for the operations. We actually have storage at another area of the building. Anyway, it just doesn't fully work. So they were going to force us out. We kind of bought some time, found this other location, and we're excited to enhance that and then bring in a drive-through. So.
That makes sense, because one time I came in to buy some boxes, and the person who was helping me was gone for quite a while. They must have gone to
They
the
probably
other
went to the storage to
other
go get the
storage
other-
in another area.
They sell cookies too.
I have
not
a
just
question.
boxes.
I love your boxes and I love your cookies.
I have a question. Do you anticipate for the drive-through people coming in through 900 East or going through that parking lot in front of Vasa? Because there's so many pedestrians.
Yes. So I'm not exactly sure on the laws or rules that you can control with the traffic control there, but I think that the regular access is coming in behind Vasa to get through there. From where I gather, it is a public right-of-way to be able to drive through there, but
Right.
I don't know if I can control that, nor can Kenny Parcells or whoever's. I know that there's a hair salon and other going back there as well, so I don't know how that.
Yeah, on the site plan, they have signage here as like a one-way, so we won't really allow
I
traffic
think her
going
question
here.
was the part in front of Vasa, if I'm remembering.
And I can't tell from the picture for sure, but isn't the walking trail right there? Is there separation between the drive-through and the walking trail, right?
Yes, sir. Yep, yes. Yeah, there's, it's, well, you can see it on there. See the pathway as it curves around.
Okay. Thanks, Casey.
Yes.
Any other discussion before we go into public hearing? Seeing none, we are now in public hearing. Now, is there anyone who has anything to bring up before the commission at this time? Seeing none, we will go out of public hearing. Any questions or further discussion for staff?
I'm ready to
or
make a
between the
motion.
commissioners?
I'm ready to make a motion if you'll allow it.
Yes, sir. I would entertain a motion.
I move the Planning Commission recommends approval of the Crumble Development Enhancement Overlay Zone Change, subject to compliance with staff's findings and conditions.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you very much for those things. We move to our next item on our agenda tonight, which is a preliminary plat and zone change, and it is a public hearing again. This is for the villas at Annie's Acres.
Looks like this is the main event.
We definitely welcome all the public involvement and the comments that they provide. We hope that they feel that the proposal is a great completion of the project that, oh man, I got a time limit? All right, let's go to public hearing. All right, try to regain my composure. Yes, so we have the existing development, Annie's Acres. I believe 2 phases were completed with a different builder. Staff was then notified of a potential change for the remainder of the project. We subsequently met with Dave Erickson. I don't know if Dave remembers, but I worked on a project with him in Springville as my homework for this meeting. I did drive through it last week, and it's actually aged very, very wonderfully. And I believe the applicant did provide some pamphlets for each one of you that outlines what they're looking to do with the remainder of the property as far as quality amenities, the type of living arrangements that are proposed. So let's dive into the request. Once again, this is a zone change. Kind of unique in the sense that a number of years ago, the city made a change to our master plan development. It is now currently an overlay, and so when that mechanism is utilized, we do have the requirement for the applicant that they apply it as an overlay to the property. And so the original Annie's Acres was not subject to that. Since then, the codes obviously have changed. So we're keeping the base zoning of R16, and we're looking for the master plan development overlay specifically to allow the proposed modifications for the remaining phases. If we look here,
And Brandon, if you would just remember, it'll be my question if you don't, is to kind of point out what are they accomplishing with the master plan development overlay versus just having a permitted R16, but keep going.
No, that's a great question. I appreciate that. R16 is standard single-family detached lot.
Correct.
And so utilizing the overlay, the master plan development, gives them flexibility to do a variety of housing product. He could still do single-family detached. He could do small lot single-family detached. In this case, they're looking at a quad product. And this is the zoning mechanism that would allow them to utilize that type of housing product.
Okay.
Does that answer the?
Yeah, I imagine it's also enabling them to do less than 6,000 square foot lots.
Correct.
Because otherwise they wouldn't be allowed to. But I thought that would be part of your answer. It sounds like it is, but I'm asking about that.
Yep.
Train of thought.
Thank you. All I can think of is crumble cookies and boxes of cookies and
milk.
I clearly love cookies. But,
Crumble cookies and milk.
I might get yanked off the stage at it. All right. Give me a second. Okay. With all seriousness, this is an important project. And the reason why is we have a partially completed previous project. And so we as staff are very sensitive to impact or effects that it might have on residents that are currently in the projects that bought into a different project thinking that it would be completed in a certain manner. Orienting ourselves, once again, we've got South Lane here, River Bottoms Road just to the top right corner. This is a separate development. This is River Run Townhomes. And so once again, Annie's Acres, the existing portion is here. The remaining phases we've got outlined in yellow. Let's go to the next slide, please.
Quick question for you. The existing portion, could it be built in the same fashion without the master plan overlay, with just an R16? Could it continue the way it is with just an R16 zoning?
Oh, I think the problem we ran into was anytime we approve a project, there's certain timeframes that the approval is valid and vested. And so I think one of the issues that we were running into was phase 2 had been recorded and you have to then commence on your next phase. Otherwise, you lose the overall approvals for the remainder of the project. And so without this, you would see a very different design and layout and product for the remainder. It's a great question. This is just, again, highlighting the area. This does, however, show the existing zones as it intensifies towards Main Street. Let's go to the next slide. I appreciate Ian going out and taking these images. Once again, this is looking north. This is River Run, townhomes that you can see in the distance. Fairgrounds are right here. Let's go to the next slide. This is looking to the southwest. You can see the river in the background here. This is the existing, I'm trying to remember, I think this was phase 1. This was phase 2, if I remember correctly, of Annie's Acres. And then you can see the remainder and then the portion along Bradford Lane. This is, again, looking north. There's a couple homes. These are not part of the proposal. That's a separate piece of property. Let's go to the next slide. So this is the applicant's proposal to finish off the remainder of the site. And so what you can see is their product that they've outlined in the pamphlet for you. And then I've also included the elevations in the staff report. A couple of different models, but largely based around the quad style. You do see a few, I keep pointing with my finger, but that's not effective. You see a few, there's a side-by-side product there, and then there are a few single-family detached units along Bradford Lane. What's different about this proposal is, and I'll let the applicant kind of speak to the breadth of the amenities that they're proposing. Clubhouse would be proposed here. You can see a continuation of the road network and the connectivity to the surrounding projects. Let's go to the next slide, please. This kind of shows what the landscaping might look like as it moves forward. The main thing that this is showing is we do have a street tree requirement, and so you can see along the public streets we would have the street trees. And then throughout the project we've got additional landscaping. Excuse me. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, please. This kind of shows an example of the landscaping immediately abutting the units, and so you'd have attention around each unit, and then we've got an example of what would be with the clubhouse. One thing that the applicant is looking at, I think, is this our last slide? One thing that they are looking at, which the master plan development overlay does allow for, is the consideration of the setbacks as it relates to the housing product. And so, for instance, we would still have appropriate setbacks to garage spaces, which would be at 25 feet or exceed that. Living spaces there are looking, in some cases, to be 15 on the front and then 15 on the rear. And that's a request as far as the product style. Let me just look at my notes real fast. I'm sure the applicant would love to come up and address you, and then, as you've noted a couple times, we do have quite a few people here for the public comment session. One thing that I will point out, we've got 47 existing units in Annie's Acres, and then the villas would be finishing off the project with 103 units for a total of 150. One thing that was brought up with the Development Review Committee is condition number 4. If we can go to the next slide. Oh, it's cut off. I apologize. There is a proposal to realign roads in the future to the north, and so the fourth condition kind of encapsulated a number of things that were discussed with the DRC as far as that future road alignment and working with the city as far as potentially accommodating that. Some curb radii that was softened, and then there was some discussion on fencing. If we go back to the landscape plan, I'll just highlight. There's an existing masonry wall that would be continued here. The previous plans for Annie's Acres were approved with a vinyl fence on the north side. And then the south side, where it abuts South Lane, there's a wrought iron fence along the trail. That would be continued on Bradford Lane is what was recommended by the DRC. Any questions for staff at this point?
I have a question. You mentioned 15-foot setbacks. Is that consistent with the existing setback of the built product?
I'd have to throw some measurements on the map. If we go back to one of the aerial photos, there's a quad product that's different. Let's go back, keep going back. So here you can see a quad product with the shared driveways. I don't have that number, but I could look. I know with the homes here, I think we went with a 20-foot setback, if I remember, or it might even be less. We'll find out in just one second. Can we start here? Byron, will you throw a measurement right here?
Are those quads the same size as the quads that are being proposed tonight?
They sure look similar, don't they?
They do. I'm just
Different
not sure.
layout, but similar type
Same
product.
size though? Because if they're the same size, I don't know why you'd need a different setback, but that's kind of what I'm getting at.
So let's start here real fast, if you can zoom in. What I'll want is one here, one here. No, back of the sidewalk where the property line is.
Back of the sidewalk looks like it might be 10, but it's tough to tell from this angle.
And then, yeah, it's 15.
Okay.
So I'd be comfortable saying it's in line with what currently is there.
Brandon, I have one question. As I looked through this, there was some reference to making some changes in Bradford Lane as part of this project to, if I recall, maybe I'm thinking of something else.
I'm not sure as far as changes. What will change is there will be improvements to Bradford Lane, and so
Yes.
As part of the development, the applicant will be installing the west half plus some as far as improvements, and so there would be curb gutter, sidewalk,
and sidewalk.
expanded asphalt, and then on Bradford, this side of the street would have a sidewalk. In the future, the east side would have a trail.
Okay. So there would be the fence, the trail, and sidewalk as well as the curb and gutter.
No, so the trail
On
will
Bradford.
come here. There's a roundabout with the Windsong subdivision. The
Yes.
trail stays on the north side of South Lane, but then as it departs north of the roundabout, it would be on the east side of Bradford Lane.
Okay.
So we'd have
All
a
right.
public sidewalk on the development side
On the
of
west
Bradford
side.
Lane.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so Bradford Lane is 420 east, is that right? I'm just looking at Google Maps on here, looking over here.
We can go
420.
back to our, I
Would
just
not be
noticed
420. Did you
Bradford
say
Lane,
west
but-
or east?
East,
East.
south 420
Possibly.
east. I can see where Bradford Lane comes off of River Bottoms, and that connects over there. Okay. Just in my head, I drive the River Bottoms a lot, and Bradford Lane was in a different place, but that's because it's coming in from that other direction. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Also, I'm sorry, I have a couple questions too. So, the River Run development, could you go back to the zoning map? There was some green and some orange. Back a few slides. Right there. Okay. so can you point where River Run is in the orange?
River Run is in the orange.
That's the ones there, and then River Run is also the development that, it's a continuation, the development that we just approved their next phase. It was reconfigured, and is that the green? Thank you.
It's the orange. It's mostly
That
off the
orange
screen
there.
in that last image.
Okay, and then the two green are private, other properties.
Yes, this is the Monty Griffiths parcel. I don't know if Monty's here. I think that's the right parcel. This is actually a future phase of River Run.
Oh,
And then.
is that a future phase that we've looked at before?
You've seen it conceptually.
Okay, that's what I thought.
We had the concern with what the intersection might look like in the future here. And so the applicant was kind enough to kind of hold off on that last phase until we have more final direction for them as to whether it's a roundabout or a T intersection or
Gotcha.
a full intersection.
And then the green down to the right, that's
Ailes.
Hales. And they're
one
not
here?
part of any other, they're just independent, yeah.
Yeah, and then the areas without a zoning color assigned to it, those are still unincorporated Utah County.
Okay, I know this is probably all implied, but I just want to clarify. So Annie's Acres is a partially completed project, and the developer of Annie's Acres sold to the owners of the Leisure Villas. Is that correct?
I'll let the property owner.
Okay. And
We'll
then,
find out.
all right, we'll find out from that. Okay, and then,
So we probably could invite the applicant and then
Right.
invite the owner and then maybe the
And
public
then
hearing.
continue with questions.
okay.
Because they may be
I'll
able
ask
to,
my questions after then.
well, and we can ask the applicant some too before we go into public hearing.
But just to reiterate, you already talked about road connectivity to River Run. Is
Yes,
that
so
correct?
if we go back to the
That was shown.
landscape plan, Byron.
I know you showed that, but I just
So
want
this
to.
is tilted on its side. North is to the screen left. River Run would lie right here. They have an existing street stub that the villas would be connecting on completing. There is a connection to the future extension of Volunteer Drive. We've got a connection to Bradford Lane, which is in with Plat B. And then you obviously see the existing street network connections as well.
Very good. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brandon. Do we have someone here to speak for the applicant?
Good point.
Just here chomping at the bit. Hi, my name's Dave Erickson. I'm with Leisure Villas. We've got the whole team here, so I think we can answer any engineering questions that come up, and want to specifically answer a couple of questions that Mr. Ernest raised. But first, let me introduce who we are. Leisure Villas is now a quarter century old. We've been doing 55 plus communities from North Logan to Springville over the course of those years. We don't know much, but we do know how to make successful senior communities. And what you said, Mr. Mendenhall, about you want friendly neighborhoods, I would say that's exactly what we strive to create. We create communities within larger communities. And they're not just a normal development that you see every Wednesday. What these are, you got to remember, these are all retirees, and there's a type of housing need for every stage of life, and we have really focused on, and we've learned over the years what's important to most seniors and why our projects are so successful, and that is, it comes down to basically three things. First of all, obviously they want nice homes that can accommodate two folks, wheelchair accessibility, two people comfortably, but able to handle large family gatherings. That's one thing. The second thing that's most important that you probably wouldn't think about, but we've learned, is it's HOA fees and HOA management of these communities is extremely important because a lot of our folks are on fixed incomes, and so we're very sensitive to anything that would cause HOA fees to rise along with that, you have to have quality management to maintain the quality of the landscaping and the snow removal and just the efficacy of how the whole community runs. The third thing that we believe that's critical to make these communities work, which is the major change that we're going to present here, is we develop our communities with large, expensive amenity packages, with real amenities, which is, in this case, would be one of our largest clubhouses. And in that clubhouse, we have a large party room, exercise facility, a swimming pool, lounge area, barbecue, theater, kitchen area to lay food out, because there's always a party going at the clubhouse. So it's important. What we create, frankly, is legitimately friendly communities. I mean, we're trying to, the social aspect of what, the lifestyle, social aspect of what we bring to the table is pretty important, okay? It shouldn't be diminished. And that's the main thing that we are talking about here is we've been working with Ms. Bradford for a while now to come into a unique situation which has an existing, it could stand on its own right now, 55 restricted community, and we are coming in to augment what has already been done there, bring our stuff to complete this project and take over the existing HOA CCNRs, roll ours over the top of that, and basically absorb into a new community which will finish out the project. The difference is that the existing residents weren't expecting a clubhouse when they moved in, and now they're going to get a big clubhouse. I hope they take advantage of that. The situation as it sits now, it has had some issues that we think will be corrected with our HOA documents, our CCNRs, and we're basically taking what's been done and taking it, and our part of this development will, our goal is to have improved landscaping. I don't know how to say this, but basically an upgraded, kind of nicer landscape package, and better amenities. So that's it in a nutshell. But to answer a couple of specific issues you brought up, why does it need the overlay district? The thing that's so unique about this kind of a project, it's not just a subdivision. It is essentially a PUD. So the homeowners, these are single, what are called zero lot line homes. So the people own the land, they're not condos, they own the land under their home. But it basically floats on a sea of common area. So anything outside of the home itself is common area, which is managed by the HOA. That would have to be done under the overlay. The overlay provides the vehicle to do that, among other things. You ask about the size of the homes. I don't know how big the existing ones are, but they look like they're similar to ours in terms of size. We like ours better. I mean, we've been tweaking these over 25 years. We actually listen to our buyers and say, what would you like that you don't have? And we've added some of those features. One was a large patio. Each of the homes has a large enclosed patio, because when we started this project, we didn't realize how many widows have little foo-foo mini doodles. So it's a real thing. They have to have a place for the dog. So we've created these patios partially to accommodate that. Size-wise, they range from 1,650 up to 2,700 feet.
Just for clarification, right over there, is that the clubhouse and that's the pool?
Yeah.
Clubhouse, pool? Okay.
Yeah, the clubhouse is going to be roughly, 4,200 square feet, something in that ballpark.
That would have been my next question.
Okay.
So around 4,000 square feet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's nice. I mean, and that's an investment we make. The existing homeowners, they're...
Sorry.
What? I missed that.
It's a good distraction.
All right.
I have a question for
Sure.
you. You mentioned the HOAs. I don't know what the what the existing
Thank you, Mr. Cloward.
what the existing units are being charged now, but what do you anticipate as the HOA fees?
Well, that's a good question. And again, our goal is to try to keep them as low as possible because that's really a big deal. $15 a month is to a lot of folks makes a difference. So we try to keep them $200 or right around $200, or some of them are still under $200. The main driving factor in that cost is, frankly, water and snow removal. And the snow removal, that varies quite a bit. Some years you save money, some you spend more than you anticipate. But we have, again, we've learned through experience how to set these up so that there are ongoing reserves, so that when a capital improvement is needed, there's money there to pay for that stuff. But in terms of the HOAs, so far we've been successful keeping them right around 200.
Is that
I don't know what it is now, frankly.
I was going to say,
Much
is that
is
a
it?
significant
No.
raise for Annie's Acres?
100 a month.
Yeah, a month.
Okay.
But that also includes a lot of reserves. 12, I think it's 12.5% is what's going in for reserves.
Does each unit have a 2-car garage?
Yeah, each home has a 2-car garage with room in front for 2 cars.
Can you tell us about visitor parking?
If you'll notice, well, it's kind of hard to zoom in, but there are we like to put in off-street parking wherever there's room, just a few stalls. There's parking obviously at the clubhouse, and then there's a couple of spots you can kind of see where we've added 5 or 6 spots. There's one over there. There's one up on top there. So if wherever we have a little excess room, we like to put off-street parking.
We've been sticklers about that before with other developments, with having enough visitor parking. Are these roads accommodating to on-street parking? Because it looks like it could be.
Well, they are city streets, so whatever the requirements of the city parking, we meet the road width and all of the design criteria that has been imposed on the project. But even if we have that, we still like having it off-street if possible.
So there's a 2-car garage at each unit plus a driveway that cars could,
Correct.
that visitors could park in.
Yes.
I mean, frankly, the only time we've really ever had a problem parking-wise is on Mother's Day and Christmas. And I don't know how you get around that. It's just...
Sunday afternoons.
Sunday afternoons is, sometimes can be an issue too.
You mentioned landscaping. Does that include the vegetation, flowers, things like that are planted?
Yeah, now, landscaping, I know I sound like a developer, but it happens to be true. You can just drive through some of our projects, but we put a lot of emphasis on landscaping because we like nice landscaping. But what we've learned is that folks don't want what. Now, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong here, but that's our clubhouse. Our folks they only want to spend HOA money on stuff that they're actually using. So we don't do big football fields of sod. We want quality landscaping, particularly on the entryways and around the corners and around. I mean, our stuff is nice. And the problem, or not the problem, but our challenge going forward for everybody is the new, less water-intensive landscaping presents a challenge to how do you make that nice while not wasting water. And we're right in the trend. Everybody's in the middle of that right now, feeling their way through that. So what we have done in our projects is we've widened out the shrub areas, the bed areas, switched to drip irrigation in there, and then we're shrinking the grass areas. Now, in terms of flowers, the homeowners are encouraged to plant whatever they want around their own homes. If some of them like a little garden, some like flowers. And then we clean that up. The HOA cleans that up at the end of the year. But
our city has a wonderful resource for how to do more water-wise landscaping. If you'd
I've
like
been
to
reading.
have a look.
Yeah, you can do it nice. I mean, it can be done. But we're, it's going to be a an educational process for, I think, a lot of folks for the next several years, maybe the next decade.
So this is quite a number of units. How many phases do you anticipate?
We'll just do this in one phase.
So you're planning on doing the entire thing in one shot?
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to take a while, but still.
Yeah, we'll just march our way through. And I mean, in our experience, we have never, I mean, we have folks lined up, generally speaking, before we build a combination of some spec homes and homes for folks that have already signed up. So even through the tough times, we build through quickly. And the reason is there's a huge demand. There's a need for this kind of home. I mean, not everybody wants to mow the lawn anymore.
What is the cost of these units generally? I won't hold you to
I'm gonna
anything.
guess they're gonna be
I got real quiet back there.
500 to 700. That's not my area, but 500 to 700 based on how
In the
big.
handout, it says 5 to 600,000.
And of course, the detached housing would be more. About the same, okay. Very good. Any other questions for the applicant? We may have some more after.
Oh, I'm sure.
We will have some more after we hear from the public, but
Is one of your developments the one over by the Payson Temple? There's a 55-plus community.
No, we would love to have one over there, but unfortunately, that I know the one you're talking about there. That went in. Actually, they had a lot of issues. I can't remember what happened out there exactly, but that had some issues. But that's not one of ours. We don't have any issues on our project.
I've been there and know a couple people that live there and are very happy. But anyway, just curious.
very good. Thank you.
You bet.
All right. We'll go into public hearing, and maybe just as a raise of hands, how many people are going to want to be heard? We've got a number. I think what we'll do then is that we will impose a time limit and hold your comments to things that haven't been said. We'd like to hear everyone's comment, but we'd ask you to refrain from just saying the same thing over and over again. And if you'd like to kind of partner up and have one person represent 3 or 4 of you, would of course adjust the time. But we generally do 3 minutes, and that's what we will do. And we encourage everyone that's got any kind of a comment, question, or concern to come up at this time. So we will go into public hearing at this time, and we invite the public to come up, state your name, and we'll be on the clock.
Hi, my name is Marissa Mills. I own the property just north of this, the undeveloped spot right by Annie's Acre, or the Volunteer Road right there. So we purchased this property 2.5 years ago and did quite a bit of due diligence about the ability to develop this. Access has always been a concern, especially in this area that has been developed, figuring out where roads are going to be. When we first started, Annie's Acres preliminary plat allowed access to our property on our western border. However, the concept plan that has been presented now cuts off this access. We presented a concept plan to the DRC in March of 2023, all from this access point to our property. And at that time, we had a lot of feedback that they really wanted a continuous product so that there weren't just single little tiny, developments here and there. They wanted a cohesive plan, and we've really tried to do that. We even have worked with the Bradfords as well as Leisure to negotiate selling our land, but none of that worked out. We were never able to come together on that. So we would like to request that Annie's Acres be required to provide a connection to the property via a public road. We are not in control of what happens with Volunteer Drive. There's been a lot of back and forth. There was a roundabout. The Griffiths land might need to have have the home demolished to accommodate that road. And so there's a lot of unknown about when that will happen and where that road placement will be. And so in order to have a timely manner of us to be able to develop our property, we would like that access. Also wondering why the fence is vinyl by our property and not the same as the other, around the other parts of their land in the brick and whatnot. And those are our comments.
Thank you.
My name is Ron Stoker. I live in Annie's Acres, and we've been there 2.5 years, and we love it. I'm excited to see this new development come in. I think it'll be a great adjunct to Annie's Acres. We've looked at a lot of their products. We've driven there, my wife and I, and they are a quality group. They've not given me any crumbles to say that. I just really like the product that they've presented, and I believe it will be a great benefit to Annie's Acres. Thanks.
Thank you.
I don't know what these boxes are doing sitting way over here.
Look out, they may stay right there.
I think the commission might appreciate if the public assists in
Yes.
eating those.
Yes,
I would
please.
say.
So
I'll take one box back.
as you leave tonight, make sure to grab one.
Absolutely.
I'm Bill Hoovler. I live in Annie's Acres as well.
What was your name again?
Bill Hoovler. Hoeveler. And we've been there since December 21. Moved here from California to retire, and it's been a great blessing to be able to live in this community with all of our friends that sit here. The proposal there, as was said, is going to be a major boom to us to be able to have not only the amenities that they're proposing to build, but also the fact that we get to be part of that CCNR there as well. I think what they haven't shown you is pictures and renderings and so forth of their homes, of the landscaping and so forth. And we've been privileged to work with Vicki Bradford to be able to see those renderings and so forth. So I'm very impressed with what their product is and what they've done in other areas as well. It is a 55-plus community. It will stay a 55-plus community, which is something that we are very much in favor of. And hopefully the access that was just brought up here does not detract from anything that's already proposed here and can be accommodated very easily. The volunteer drive extension is not part of this discussion, but it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. The development to the west of us, Keystone, and what was the other name of the first one? Concord, are nice looking, townhomes, whatever. So I don't think I think we complement with them, and I don't think, hopefully, that won't distract and draw them into our clubhouse and pool and so forth. So we hope to be able to manage that correctly. Anyway, great to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Paula Daniels, and I live at Annie's Acres too. When we started looking for a home moving out of Salt Lake at a holiday, there were no single family, one-story home to be found in this valley anywhere. We traveled from Salt Lake to Ogden to Tooele down to Richfield. Nobody is building single family. Everybody has to have a basement. We don't like basements. So we started in Ogden with Leisure Villas. And at the time, we hadn't sold our home. but it was so beautiful. The landscape, the homes themselves, just lovely. So we kept thinking, well, when we sell our home, which it was before the hit where everything went out of sight price-wise, we thought, well, we'll go to Ogden. Well, then time came and it was like, we can't afford that. So we went to, we stayed in our home in Holiday, and then as things progressed, we went to we sold our home. We got a huge amount of money in Holiday for a 65-year-old home. So when we started looking, we couldn't find anything. We went to Tooele, and they were just building leisure villas out there. And we needed a place to live, so we bought a condo, which didn't work. And we found this Annie's Acres that was going to be built out, and the project looked wonderful. 55, the landscape was beautiful, everything really looked great. So we got on the list. Luckily, we got a single family home. We didn't get a quad, we got a single family, and we've loved it. We have just loved it. But not having the project finished is a concern, because the value that we spent isn't there if the project isn't complete. So with Leisure Villa coming in and saying, wow, we'd like to take this project on, it's like a godsend. So we're for it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Richard Miller, and my wife Janae and I, we also live in Annie's Acres. We moved in December of 21. And we echo the sentiments of those who live in Annie's Acres. It's been a wonderful transition for us. We're both Utah natives, but we had lived for 30 years up in the Seattle area, so we moved here from Seattle. And I can echo the comments, finding a place to live that wasn't on multiple levels. I'm 70. We wanted to buy some place that could be our live till we die in home. We didn't want a basement, and there weren't a lot of options around. And when we found Annie's Acres, it just fit the bill. The pleasant surprise has been the sense of community that we have within Annie's Acres. That's been a wonderful and great experience. We would like to see it get completed. The fact that it got started and did the 2 phases and then dead-ended in development, that's been a concern from a couple of perspectives. Some of us are tired of, whenever there's wind, picking tumbleweeds out of our yards. That will go away, I think, when that gets completed. There were some questions that were asked that I think I can help address a little bit. One of you asked about HOA fees currently versus what they would be with leisure. The current HOA fees have been $100 a month since the HOA began, but the HOA is underfunded. The HOA currently has virtually no reserve for future maintenance, which is not the obligation of the HOA, but it hasn't been under direction of the owners, it's been under direction of the developer. And I think if they had to do it over again, they would do it differently. If this doesn't go through and we're left independent, we're going to have to raise our fees much higher than the $200 to recoup in building up a reserve that will be needed for future maintenance. So that hopefully answers your question there. This actually is a better deal for us to be blended in with their HOA management. They know what they're doing with it. It'll be dispersed across a broader number of people who are participating. Somebody asked about parking. In the current portion of Annie's Acres, there actually is no visitor parking anywhere. There's just on-street parking. And the fourplexes, you actually cannot park in those driveways. The people who live there have to park in their garages because there's not enough room there. And when visitors come, they have to park on the streets. That's not really been a problem. There's enough on-street parking. And our home has a 3-car garage, and we have a couple of additional slip beside it. We're one of the standalone homes. But a lot of the homes just have the garage parking and then parking on street. So what they have done to put in a little bit of visitor parking, to me, looks sufficient based on what I've seen with our experience. We had an HOA meeting on the 25th of March and had I don't know, 30, 40 people in attendance. We have 47, I think, residents currently, and I think at that meeting we had 32 or 30-something people who came, and we just took an impartial vote. We went through this whole proposal with Leisure and what it would do and what it would look like, and we looked at slides of their properties, and we talked about the finances of our HOA currently and the problems that exist there. And then we took a vote, and out of those 30 people, everyone voted in favor of moving forward with this plan, except one, who didn't vote against it, just said he wanted more information. So that gives you kind of a feel for what's going on. We're also pleased to see the build out of the development be single story, or some are single story with lofts rather than moving into larger townhomes. And that's it for me. The only other thing I think I would say is Miss Mills got up and talked about that little piece of land there and how the road has changed. From what I understood, the conversation regarding the sale of that portion to Leisure or to the Bradfords to include with the Annie's Acres development, the reason that didn't progress is because there was an exorbitant price being asked for that property. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Howdy, my name is Ryan Bradshaw. So my sister and I, we own the property to the west, once again, that narrow property. I'm a resident of Spanish Fork. My wife's parents actually live in Annie's Acres property. We love the community. It's been really great place for us to come and visit and our children. We love the product that's coming in here. Our concern is just once again, we have a very, very narrow property that it's been a real challenge we've been working with a lot of different folks from the city, the different staff. And our concern was that we've put a lot of our plans on hold, waiting for this project to kind of come to fruition. And so it's really just an access issue for us. The property had an access point, and that's where, when we bought the property, we had based our decision off of there being an access point. And so our only real request, kind of like was mentioned, was that there can be some sort of accommodation, either from the builder or from the city, so that we can be able to have access to develop that property. Because of the frontage with where Volunteer Drive may end up being, it just doesn't provide any other real point. So we just want that to be really taken into consideration. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Keith Sumption from Springville. I lived there for 78 years, pretty attached to the city in Plat A. So when you talk about the central part of the Spanish Fork, I know enough about Utah history that Plat A, Brigham Young's plan, it's all organized. North, south, east, and west, count to 10, you're there. New divisions or something else to keep that all straight. So I'm glad I'm not with the police department or the fire or anybody else to get into some of these places, because it's not north and south, east and west. Anyway, the house I grew up in, a little background real quick, is it was built in 1899. And I lived in it for 67 years, 10 years in 2 other houses. And circumstances changed with the death of my wife, remarry, and had stairs in the old house, and Annie's Acres all one level. That's great. I've got 6 inches is all I need to go to that house, and cut it down from an old house of 2,100 square feet down to 1,700 square feet, all we need. My house, our house, is in the upper right-hand corner, It's in Annie's Acres. We've been in it 2 years. 2 years in October. Thrilled to death. It's clean, comparable ages, convenient. It's great. We get all the benefits of the Utah County Fairgrounds without being there. I've been into it several times, but that's a plus. We get the lights and we get the sounds and sometimes the dialogue that goes with it. And so with Volunteer Road, my concern is that Bradford Lane twists and turns a little bit. When it gets up to River Bottoms Road, there's going to be a real serious accident right there. That Mill Road, whatever you want to, that drains down into that, then it cuts back into the side of the hill. My proposal is that somebody put a roundabout at the north end of Bradford Lane and River Bottoms Road when that comes in. You can pull up on that, but you cannot see to the right. I've called the city street department twice. They've been pretty good. Removed a couple of trees and some brush, but they could do more. But that's a bad corner. That's a bad corner. The other concern, really not concerned with it. I'm very pleased. And the west side, that's high impact housing on Volunteer Road, and when it comes off 200 East going up, I'd like to see a fire truck get up through there. Fortunately, in ours, very pleased. The road's big enough, 2-car garage, and put 2 cars on the driveway. There's 4 cars. Like somebody said, Mother's Day and Christmas, forget everything. Anyway, I'm happy with it. I'm happy with the proposal.
Thank you, Keith.
I'd like to see, for safety reasons, maybe some wider roads, not in the development, but the access on South Lane and River Bottoms Road to get back out of there. Because if there's any problem, you used to have several ways to get out.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we will go out of public hearing and we'll try to address some of the concerns that were expressed by the public. And anybody that would like to take a shot at some of these is welcome to do it. And we'll include staff.
Could you point out where the property owners are that would like their, I'm sorry, I didn't get their name, but.
Mills and Bradshaw?
Bradshaw's?
Bradshaw's, yeah. Could you point where their property is? Okay, right there.
We can pull it up on an aerial map. I was just discussing with Byron. They have had a number of different concepts and a number of different meetings with the DRC and other staff members, and I will admit they have had quite a bit of different direction as the city investigates and looks at what's going to happen in the area as far as Volunteer Drive extending. I asked Byron if I was remembering correctly, and I think at one of the most recent meetings, Volunteer probably will not have a roundabout. It would be a lighted intersection, and I think there was a commitment that along the Mills stretch, there's not as much of a length requirement from the roundabout, and so I believe an access was going to be permitted.
Yes. So their main access will be off Volunteer. If they were to develop, they would have to build their portion of Volunteer frontage, just like any other development, and then that would be your access into that property. We started looking at it a lot closer, that intersection with River Bottoms, Bradford, and Volunteer. As River Run, the property or the development to the north came in with some concepts. they've laid out a few designs for a roundabout, and the more we've looked at it, the less realistic a roundabout looks right there. So probably in the next transportation master plan update that we bring forward, we'll change that intersection to a signal. And so we have a few concepts of showing how that could work as just a regular four leg intersection with a signal. But that would be their main access, really. So with that, and with how River Run has already been approved with this stub into Volunteer, as staff and engineering, instead of trying to stub something right here where it was shown before, it makes more sense to line that intersection up and have a safer intersection that aligns with River Run. When you have offset intersections, it's more unsafe for left-hand turns. So we directed them to line it more up with River Run, and then whenever Volunteer comes in, either from them or from River Run, that would be that access to that road. So,
thank you.
What's the thought process on vinyl instead of masonry? So I know that there's masonry along here, Brandon. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I apologize.
You said there's masonry requirement along here, but vinyl is up here. What was the thought process on that?
As far as I can tell, I don't have the original Annie's Acres minutes or documents at my fingertips, but my understanding, and maybe the applicants can speak to it, is the original plans called for the vinyl here. And so it was a continuation of what was previously approved on the original set.
Gotcha. Mr. Erickson, you want to come up?
Come on up to the microphone.
We have to have you stand up at the mic.
Real quickly, I think I can answer this question to everybody's favor here. So, based on the comments that DRC talked about last Wednesday, I guess we've reevaluated the fencing, and we think it just makes more sense to continue the fencing that's on the west side, which is the solid masonry fencing, and just continue that on the north side too.
Okay.
So we'll just have a consistent fencing on the west and the north, and consistent on the east and the south.
Very good. Thank you.
You want that?
So I have a question about accessibility. I heard a lot of things, but I need a little bit of clarification. Yeah. So here's where this would connect, and there's access to this property here from, they would finish Volunteer Drive. So they would have neighborhood connectivity, because that's one thing we know is neighborhoods should connect to each other, right?
Well, they'd be separated by a masonry wall.
The wall.
Backyards would be separated by masonry.
That is not part of this.
Oh.
They'd be connected through that road, though.
They'd be connected
Volunteer
through
Drive
this road.
And Bradford Lane is right here. So there's, Bradford Lane's frontage is right here, and then you got Volunteer. So that Bradford Lane frontage touches that Mills property, and then Volunteer would be also along that Mills property. And so that's your frontages, really. They're kind of a corner piece, but.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the commission or from staff? I'm impressed with the residents that are in Annie's Acres now. I appreciate that you've already had meetings and talked about this, and seems like you're pretty unanimous that finishing this project will be advantageous to everybody. I think the product that is there is nice. I know a number of you people that live there, and I frequent there quite often. And I like what's there, and if this is an improvement on that, then it's really an improvement on this this project. I am familiar with other 55 and over community products in the south end of the valley, and I think that Annie's Acres is on the top end of the products that are offered. There are a couple of others that are really quite nice, and then there's a couple that have really fallen below the standards, I think. So I appreciate this being distributed to us. That shows some good examples and goes through what you guys have done in other communities, and I appreciate that too. Any other comments before we?
I have a question for staff. Are we the approving body for the plat portion of this project? I know we're not for the zone change, but
Says the plat and zone change be recommended.
I think it's recommendation on both, right?
I see that, but I'm just wondering if on the plat, the planning commission is the approving body. Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay. I know there was talk of maybe changing that. I don't know if it had been changed. Okay, that's what I was clarifying.
I'm ready to make a motion.
I would entertain the motion.
Okay, I recommend that the villas at Annie's Acres preliminary plat and zone change be recommended for approval based on the findings and conditions.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes. I know that you guys are ready to leave, but I would like to have, let's go ahead and pass these cookies out to everyone so that you guys can have one as you leave. And we want to thank the Crumble Cookie guys. That wasn't expected. And maybe we can take a 5-minute recess as the commission, just to let everyone know. The next item is item number 6, Title 15 amendment. That will not be addressed tonight. We will talk about that in just a second. And we do have one more public hearing on Title 13, which we'll take up in about 5 minutes. So let's get those in hand.
That is a good cookie.
Yes, a 5-minute break. Getting nice in my old age.
Benevolent dictator is what it's called at my house.
Benevolent.
For me, the reason is, hey, there's cookies to pass out.
All right, thanks for your patience, everybody. We will resume our commission meeting tonight. As we said, we had the next item, item number 6, Title 15 Amendment, public hearing. That has been, we would like to continue that for next week, and so I would entertain a motion to continue item number 15 until our next meeting.
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. We will continue that. That brings us to our last item tonight, which is a Title 13 amendment change, and this is a public hearing again. Oh, now who are you? We're used to Brandon. I don't know. Who are you? What have you done with Brandon?
Byron?
Brandon can do this one if he wants.
Well, it's we got to stay with bees.
Oh yeah, at least
Okay.
I'll start with the B. Here tonight, we're just proposing some very minor changes to Title 13 on the illicit discharge detection and elimination. We've recently went through a audit with the state on our MS4 permit, and one of the proposed changes that they recommended strongly for us to change in our code is to add the 4 additional items that we are proposing to add to Title 13. This is basically just what's acceptable to go down the drain that's not stormwater. And so we have a list here, and these are the 4 items we've proposed be added.
So these are the items that are allowed.
Yeah, that would not be like a violation to the MS4 permit. So.
Do you agree with these changes?
Yeah.
You personally?
Yeah, they're pretty typical, like residential car washing. You know what I mean? Like most, you wouldn't want to try to give a citation to someone washing their car in their driveway type thing. So
These are things that are just already happening.
There's some
It's
car
just
wash
being
businesses that might
clarify
benefit.
more
Clarified
in
in
code.
code.
Yeah.
I was kidding.
Yeah. Well,
These are kind of things that one would just expect to not allow into the drainage system. And probably is wise to explain that any of this water, any kind of wastewater like this, goes somewhere. And where does it end up?
Ours end up in Utah Lake.
There you go. And so in Utah Lake or Spanish Fork River gets all of the drainage from the city. And so we don't want to contaminate anything, especially some of this stuff that is in this. And so anything else you'd like to add to what we have here?
No, I think this one's pretty easy one.
Any questions from the commission?
No. If it's a public hearing, though, I guess we have to do that.
Yes, it is. So we will go into public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to come forward at this time? Seeing none.
Okay, wait.
Oh.
Oh, well.
Well, we'll go out of public hearing.
Okay.
So seeing none, we will come out of public hearing. And now, is there any further discussion from the commission?
Definition of the night. Item number 11, natural riparian habitat. That has to do with riverbanks, rivers and riverbanks, and wetland flows.
Are you asking what that is?
Well, I just looked up the definition, and it has to do with riverbanks. But how would that be an illicit discharge?
No, it's allowed.
Oh, it's
They're
allowed.
saying- those are the things that are allowed.
Oh, there you go. Definition of the night
That happens, you know.
for the general public.
And there are a lot of places along the Spanish Fork River that are naturally occurring, and they flow a short distance into the river.
Yeah.
And even northwest of Spanish Fork in those sloughs, there's other naturally occurring things that go in. That
It's a good example, yeah.
Acting Chairman, I would like to make a motion if you're ready for it.
I am ready and would entertain a motion.
I move the Planning Commission recommends approval of the Title 13 amendments.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes, or that passes. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn the Planning Commission meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.